how is art therapy different from a traditional therapy?
See, so many times we don't know how to express our feelings. So art therapy works wonders. Art itself speaks volumes. Just spontaneous art making. They can freely express themselves, to know what's going on in their minds. There's reducing the anxiety, addressing grief or bereavement, loss. Parents may notice the changes in the behavior the child has, maybe in terms of emotional regulations. The approach what I use, it's called phenomenological art therapy approach.
Yep.
It's also client-centric approach. So it's about enabling them to get there. The neurobiology of the child, so the brain itself changes. So they don't find a coherent narrative.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Tantrums to Triumphs here at Kydzadda in South Bangalore. Today we are talking to Anjanadevi Badrinath, who is a clinical art psychotherapist or also an art therapist. She has had 15 years of experience working with children and adults, creating impactful workshops in art therapy. She has also worked in various schools and developed skill enhancement programs for special education needs children. She's authored several papers and she's also an author of a children's book called Hugh Lala. And we will see the book while we talk to her when the conversation begins. Hi Anjanadevi, right? Welcome to Tantrums to Triumphs.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here. So let's begin with understanding a bit about your background, why and how you got into art therapy.
Thank you, Deepti, for having me on this show. Yes, I'm an art therapist or art psychotherapist. So the journey has been a long one.
Okay.
How I finally graduated to be an art therapist. So my qualification is basically Masters in Business Administration. I worked in the US, and so this was during summer and weekends. I used to work at an art education foundation, and I absolutely loved working with children. And I decided when I moved back to India, I would start something in the similar lines. So that meant that I need to get some credentials in terms of teaching children. So I did my pre-primary teachers training program from Symbiosis. I got my credentials as an early childhood educator. And I also put together this art program for children. It's called DoodleMagic. So I offered after-school activities, and children would get hands-on experience working with different materials, learn about global art and artists all over the world. And that's how my journey with children started. And when I was working with children, I started meeting a lot of children who had special educational needs. They're called neurodivergent children.
Yep.
So that meant that I wanted to learn a little more about how I would go about teaching those children. So I did my master's in special education and inclusion from University of Northampton, UK. And I also worked at a special education center called Brindavan Education Trust in South Bangalore. So having done that, and I used a lot of art-based practices to remediate children's concerns. And I used intermodality approaches with them. So incorporated storytelling, music and everything. So there's something deep down in me that was seeking more. Yep. That's when the exploration for art therapy happened. And I started looking for different courses, and so I came across this institution. It's called Canadian International Institute of Art Therapy. I knew that was the place for me. And so this happened during COVID. So that was the time that was productive for me. And so this is Postmaster's Diploma in Art Psychotherapy.
Yep.
And this is a 3 years master's program, and I was able to complete it in 2.5 years.
Wow.
So here I am practicing art therapy with children and adults.
Wow. So from an MBA to art therapist and masters and You've done so much. Work.
Learning never stops.
Learning never stops. And especially when you're interested and you're passionate about it, you want to learn more.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you always were into art since you were a child? Like you loved drawing, painting and everything, and yeah?
You got that right.
Okay.
So I come from a family of artists, both my parents, and my dad's actually a jewelry designer.
Oh wow,
and he is so passionate about art, and he's a self-taught classical dancer, classical singer, and my mother plays veena. So there's always art that was evident for me, and that was ubiquitous for me growing up. So I did a lot of art for myself, and there was a time where I thought I was going to major in art. So but I did study art at Chitrakala Parishad. I did some courses there, so to hone my artistic skills as well.
Excellent. It's really nice. I've known people who are artists and they love what they're doing, but I have rarely come across people who mix art with therapy and take that as a profession, and that is why I thought it'd be really interesting to talk to you about it. So can you explain how is art therapy different from a traditional therapy, traditional talk therapy?
Right.
And in terms of the impact?
Right. So art therapy, it's a branch of mental health. Right? Just like talk therapy is. So what happens in art therapy is we use creative process. So we use creative activities like drawing, painting, sculpting. It could be using different mediums of art in combination with techniques of psychotherapy, and we enable the self-expression, or how a child or an adult can communicate through using these creative activities to talk about their feelings and emotions. So what happens in talk therapy? Talk therapy predominantly focuses on communication, verbal communication. So art therapy works wonders with people where they're non-verbal, right? When, see, so many times we don't know how to express our feelings and cannot label our feelings, right? We cannot articulate what we would want to say. So art therapy works wonders because you really don't have to talk much. Your art itself speaks volumes. So that's how the art therapy is a little different than talk therapy.
Do you need to be an artist, as in do you need to have an inclination to be able to draw, or have the idea of colors and things like that to get to art therapy?
Not at all. So anybody can try art therapy. No art experience is required. There's no skill here. So it's about using the materials. So it's more about the process. It's not about the end result. So you don't really have to have any artistic skills per se to try art therapy.
Interesting you mentioned process, because that is what I wanted to talk to you about next. How does that whole process work? Say somebody is coming to you for an art therapy. How do you start? How do you figure out what materials to give them, and how do you need to bring out that experiences that they want to come in their minds and hearts?
That's actually a very deep question, because not everybody is comfortable using all kinds of materials. So I actually studied a course where we're going to learn about what materials to be used with certain clients when they come with different mental states. So there are restrictive materials to fluid materials like watercolors and things like that. So, but it again depends on each client, how they're comfortable or prefer to use which art materials per se. So, and it's more about the process. We are also constantly observing the process, how they make the art, and then comes the dialogue around the art. So in a typical session, you have like a short check-in, and you kind of assess what mental state your client is at. And then depending on that, then I either give them an art directive or help them to express things certain way where I would specifically mention. So if that's not the case, then it's free drawing, just spontaneous art making. So I encourage a lot of my clients to do that, because then they can freely express themselves, to know what's going on in their minds. And then we have a dialogue after they finish making the art.
Okay. So how do you balance that? How do you balance that artistic expression to therapeutic goals that you have? At what point do you identify what kind of therapy, what are the therapeutic goals for that
So
child
what
or the
happens
adult?
typically before we start art therapy journey, so we have something called intake session. So we
Okay.
talk to the client, the children, and their guardians and the parents. So goal setting, a little bit of goal setting is already happening at the
Okay.
initial intake sessions.
Yep.
Where when the clients come there, they want to know that they need to work on certain aspects. Maybe it is reducing the anxiety, addressing grief or bereavement, loss, or distress, or just stress.
But as an adult, they can express that. What about children? How do you know what the child needs?
Good question, Deepti. So the child usually, what is reflected is in their behavior.
Okay.
So parents may notice the changes in the behavior the child has, maybe in terms of emotional regulations. There, children might be throwing a lot of tantrums, anger issues. Then parents are the first ones to observe. Then children go to school. Teachers can also observe in that setting. So, or how the friendships get affected.
Yep.
So there comes the social skills.
Okay.
Right? So, and you see your child is like this a normal behavior usually the parents observe.
Yep.
And in the school settings the teachers do.
Okay.
So when you actually start noticing the difference, it could also be just withdrawing from everything, right? So, and that's actually is not a good sign. So behavioral changes, behavioral issues is the first thing that you notice with children.
Okay. And it's the parents who have to notice that behavioral changes and understand that the child needs intervention.
Absolutely. And there's our role.
That's where,
We come in.
yeah. How long is the process? I mean, is it weeks, months? How much are we when is it enough?
That is absolutely dependent on the client. So art therapy is also takes its own time. So it's a slower process. So sometimes when clients come, they have a lot of resistance, right?
Yeah.
And initially the sessions will be rapport building, because when you actually make art, a part of you is actually projected, right?
Yeah.
So, and sometimes a lot of clients have resistance, but they do get a hang of it in a couple of sessions. And again, depends on the therapist how the facilitation happens.
Yeah.
And so I would say I would usually encourage my clients to take at least 8 to 10 sessions just to see how it works. But sometimes you might not need even that much, depending. So, but I do have children who have been coming to me for more than 2 years.
Wow.
And children who have had journey for a year with me.
Okay.
So it varies, Deepti. It actually varies, depends on the children's needs.
Okay. Very interesting. So when they produce an art, do you interpret what they have produced, the colors that they have used, the strokes that they have used? Is there theory behind what is being produced?
We study how so the approach what I use, it's called phenomenological art therapy approach.
Yep.
It's also client-centric approach. So it's basically we kind of believe that clients have answers within themselves. It's about enabling them to get there. So not necessarily if somebody is using red, it means it's a bad thing. Or it means, the child or the adult is saying that, it represents anger. Not necessarily. So it is so relative to each one. It is so specific. So for you, say for example, yellow can be a very bright color and you like it, but somebody might not really like it.
Okay.
So some autistic children find some colors to be distressing them.
Yeah.
So but it's again very specific to each client. But of course we are trained to look at the art little differently. So but there's a lot of dialogue that is happening around the artwork the client makes. So a lot of things comes out when through that conversation we have. Why particular colors or why that shape or something like that. Not specifically the questions targeting that way, around it.
Okay, very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting how art can, help you heal, especially as a therapy. Would you like to, it'll be nice if you can share a success story without breaching any confidentiality. How was it when this, especially with children, if a child has come and what have you done and how has he or she changed?
Okay, I do have a case study to talk about.
Okay.
So this is again, I do trauma-informed art therapy and also try to learn about the attachment styles children have with their parents. So this is about a child, this is at the NGO where I work.
Okay.
And this child is like 10 years and has a background of abuse, sexual abuse, and so she's in a rehabilitation center. And so art therapy was chosen for her from the caregivers and the founders of the NGO. So we decided to work together and see how the child responds to art therapy. So there's a lot of things that was associated with the child because of loss of both the parents.
Okay.
And see what happens when a child goes through trauma or grief or something like that, right? When it is intense and deep, the neurobiology of the child, so the brain itself changes, right? So then when I was talking to you about behavioral issues, it could be about throwing tantrums, anger, and that child obviously comes from a underprivileged background, so she would spit at people and she would be angry and things like that. So, and it was wonderful how the child responded to art therapy in first few sessions itself. So, and she enjoyed using the colors, started to express, and she started, see what happens with children, right? There is also certain loss of memory when they go through a trauma, right? So they don't find a coherent narrative. So sometimes it's in bits and pieces and they start reliving it. So we want to find a good narrative for the child to see how they can make sense of what they've experienced. So it takes time. It was quite a journey. So what happened through art therapy, she started establishing that secured connection with me because she understood that was the safe space and she is not judged about how she makes art or what she talks about. So I think the rapport building took some time and the child started expressing what the child underwent. And that became very evident in the art. So initially her art was very regressive. So you would see for a 10-year-old, that was not an age-appropriate art at all. But over certain sessions, and that was in the middle of the journey in the art therapy for her, say over 12 sessions. So then her art changed completely.
Wow.
The quality of the lines, the usage of the colors, and she started talking about the experiences. So once she externalized everything, then the journey was focused towards healing and then the growth.
Wow.
So she calmed down at the center, and what was evident with the child was the happiness she, expressed with other people in the, the space, and how she would talk to me. And so it's a happy disposition she expressed. So that reflected in different aspects of her life. So it could also be her studies, or she had better sleep, her eating habits changed, and her social skills with people around her changed. So that itself shows, we met the therapeutic goals with the child.
Wow.
So that was almost a year-long journey I'm talking about.
Okay.
But it was just wonderful for me and for the child.
Yeah, it must be very touching to work with somebody like that.
Yes.
And you want to see the change.
Correct.
Because what she's gone through is
she had a lot
quite
of
extreme.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
So, but it was a wonderful journey for her and for me as well.
Absolutely. I can understand that totally. Yes. That must feel really good to help somebody get through that. Great. So, how do you think parents can help their children at home with emotional expression using art therapy? Is there any tips that you would like to give parents if they see slight behavioral changes? Maybe it is the gadgets, maybe it is the environment at school.
Correct.
What is it that you recommend to parents?
See, there's a particular set of training you need to go through this, right?
Okay.
So you need to be a certified art therapist to do that. But definitely, parents can keep an eye on how their children's artwork has changed. So I had a parent, she was just 11 years old when she started therapy with me, and she's 13 now.
Okay.
So what her mother initially observed was her artwork.
Okay.
She drew the similar set of artwork. It's about, it looked like a girl experiencing pain or like a vacant observation, you know, how she could portray it in her paintings. And that was only thing she drew. So when her mother approached me, she said, why is that my child doesn't draw flowers or, you know, anything to do about the nature? And can you actually make her do that? So that was the question the parent had.
Okay.
But I had to tell the parent, when she comes to art therapy, there's nothing like that. Like I have to tell her what she needs to do, because this is not the regular art classes, right? There is no skill development here. There's no target setting here. It's about enabling the self-expression in the child so that they can connect to their deepest emotions and thoughts. So I told the mother that let her do what she needs to do, right?
Yeah.
We will see how we can take this forward, because it was more to do for the child to express her pain.
Okay.
So she had lost her grandfather, so she was processing too much pain. I would say the loss and things like that.
Okay.
So she had other set of challenges we simultaneously addressed. So it's about different goal settings also towards the journey.
Yeah, and I think you've rightly said about how some people may interpret art therapy as just arts and crafts. You're just going there and drawing and coming. How is it going to help you? Have you had people asking you something like that?
So when the art making is happening, right, in a therapeutic setting, in art therapy, so the client is not focusing on the composition of the art, or am I going to use the colors to make the art pleasing, appealing, or aesthetically sensitive. None of it matters, right?
Okay.
It's only about expressing yourself, and you have freedom to do that using different materials. And so art that is made in therapeutic setting is slightly different than how you would do it in the art class.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a very big misconception people would probably have around.
There's no coaching, right? There's no skill development. I'm not setting a target saying that you need to, color within the lines or make it look certain way. No, not at all.
Yeah. So have you noticed any trends in children's mental health, especially post-pandemic?
Definitely. I think isolation has given different set of challenges for children, right? Because they have more of screen time.
Yeah.
Everything was transitioned to online. So, and they spent a lot of time just being indoors, right? So their children were given a lot gadgets, and they spent a lot of time being with themselves. So that means that they were robbed of so much, social skills. I'm talking about the early years, right? So 6 years, 4 years children. How would you make them sit in front of the computer for like hours together to listen to the teachers talk and get things done? So not only children, I saw isolation, having a lot of issues with adults as well. They started internalizing a lot of things for themselves, and I have clients come to me and say I became very depressed during pandemic. One is obviously the health issues and the death rates and things like that. and also their relationships within the families got affected.
Interesting.
So there was a lot of depression that adults experienced.
Yes, absolutely.
I myself felt it at times, felt lonely, right?
Yeah.
Because you were just homebound for a long time,
Yeah.
and your family members were going through health issues and affected by COVID. So, and I did a lot of art for myself.
Wow.
So I started, expressing myself. So, and just a little different than what I spoke earlier, but I made a lot of flowers.
Oh, wow.
So, just to make sure that, I also had something to communicate, meaning hope. There's always hope. So my series were about hope and looking forward to life.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah.
I can totally relate. I think everybody can relate to what they have gone through during pandemic, and So how does digital art fit into your art therapy? Is there any space for it?
Definitely. So I started my profession as a virtual art therapist, right? So they were all virtual sessions because it was during COVID, right? So there was no in-person sessions per se. So clients used different materials that was available for them at home. I told one of the children to use chapati dough to express just because clay was not available. No stores were open, right? So as simple as that, or whatever they could find it in their homes and gardens and things like that. So we used different materials. So coming to digital art, children explored a lot of apps, right? Where they could make art digitally.
Yes.
So, and sometimes when we had check-in, so Zoom platform has whiteboard. So children were able to draw on the whiteboard and we were able to see. So digital art is also equally effective as the traditional ones too.
Wow.
Some children actually prefer to do that. And if they're good at it, why not use that?
Why not? Yeah. Excellent. So how do you think the society should support children's mental well-being?
That's the need of the hour, right? So when we talk about society, we have families, we have schools, we have healthcare professionals, we have policymakers, community. Everybody put together is what society is all about, right? So it helps that all of them come together and work towards children's welfare. So giving them the right kind of help that is needed, right? So catch them early and break the stigmas, right? So not, people hardly talk about mental health, but that's not so anymore. So we need to build that kind of awareness and to make use of services, right? So that children, they grow up in safe spaces and they have resilience to thrive. So that is my message for the society.
Fantastic. I think that is a very great line that you said there. Children should have resilience to thrive.
Absolutely.
And we as adults need to support, identify where they need help and ensure that they get the help that they need.
Exactly.
Awesome. So what would you suggest to somebody who wants to become an art therapist, who wants a career in art therapy?
Good. So I would suggest that they need to do their research and find the right place for them. So there are a lot of people offering art therapy, coaching and things like that. But you need to understand, you need to go to a place where it is, where you get certified and you have good professors. You learn under the best professors. My professor is Lucille Prue. She's 94 years old. She's considered as grandmother of art therapy. And I'm so happy to have learned from professionals like Dr. Michelle Winkle and Cheryl Ann. So they're all associated with Canadian International Institute of Art Therapy. So there's also art therapy masters that's offered in MIT Pune. So you can, people who have that passion to pursue in India, so they can look up for the courses offered from MIT Pune also.
Excellent. So there is resources available for anybody who wants to pursue art therapy. Fantastic. It was wonderful chatting with you, Anjana.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out and coming here to create awareness about art therapy and sharing your professional knowledge on art therapy. I'm sure a lot of parents who don't know about art therapy will it'll be very beneficial to them. And we will leave Anjana's handles and links and contact information on our channels, and you can talk to her if you need any help. Thank you very much, Anjana, for coming.
Thank you, Deepti, for having me on the show. Thank you.